The sun hung merciless over Bidwell, Arizona territory on that scorching July afternoon in 1878. The dusty main street had transformed into an impromptu auction ground, and nearly every resident of the small frontier town had gathered to witness what promised to be the most degrading spectacle they'd seen in months. 19-year-old Clara Rawlins stood on a makeshift platform constructed from weathered planks, her substantial frame, easily 370 pounds, swaying slightly in the oppressive heat. Her uncle, Silas Rawlins, a thin, cruel man with calculating eyes, paced around her like a carnival barker, gesturing dramatically as he addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," Silas called out, his voice carrying the practiced enthusiasm of a snake oil salesman, "I present to you my niece, Clara Rawlins. Now, I know what you're thinking. She's no prize to look at. Big as a barn, slow as molasses, and eats enough to feed a cavalry regiment. But hear me out. This girl can cook, she can clean, and she's strong as an ox. Someone must need that kind of abundance around their property." Laughter rippled through the crowd, harsh, ugly laughter that made Clara's cheeks burn with humiliation. She kept her eyes fixed on a distant point beyond the crowd, willing herself not to cry, not to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She'd survived 19 years of mockery and cruelty. She could survive this too. $10, someone called out mockingly. "I'll give you $10 if she comes with a team of mules to haul her around." More laughter. Clara's hands clenched into fists at her sides, her nails digging crescents into her palms. This was her uncle's solution to being rid of her. Auction her off like livestock to whoever would take her. Her parents had died when she was 12, leaving her in Silas's care, and he'd made it abundantly clear for 7 years that she was nothing but a burden he couldn't wait to unload. "Come now," Silas pressed, his joviality starting to crack. "Surely someone needs help around their place. She may not be pretty, but she's useful. $20, that's my opening bid. Who'll give me 20 for this fine specimen of productivity?" The crowd's laughter was dying down, replaced by uncomfortable shifting. Even in the rough frontier town of Bidwell, this spectacle was pushing the boundaries of acceptable behavior. People enjoyed watching others be humiliated, but actually participating in buying a human being, even as an indentured servant, which was the legal fiction Silas was operating under, was another matter entirely. That's when everything changed. A boot thudded heavily onto the edge of the platform, and the crowd fell instantly silent. Clara's eyes snapped to the source of the sound and widened with shock. Dex Granger stood at the edge of the platform, and he was perhaps the most intimidating presence Clara had ever seen. He stood 6'4", with the kind of powerfully muscular build that made other men instinctively step back and give him room. His shoulders were massive, his arms thick with strength, his chest and abdomen showing the defined musculature of someone who spent every day doing hard physical labor. He wore simple working clothes, dusty denims, a cotton shirt that strained across his broad chest, a worn leather vest, but he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had never lost a fight and never expected to. His face was weathered by sun and wind, square-jawed and handsome in a rough, uncompromising way. Dark hair fell to his collar, and his eyes, a striking blue that seemed to see right through a person, were currently fixed on Silas Rawlins with an intensity that made the smaller man take an involuntary step backward. "How much?" Dex asked, his voice a deep rumble. What? Silas stammered, clearly not expecting this development. How much to take her off your hands? Dex repeated. Name your price. Silas's eyes lit with greedy calculation. $50. That's my final. Done. Dex pulled a leather wallet from his vest and counted out bills with deliberate precision. $50. But let me make something very clear to you, Rollins. I'm not buying your niece like she's property. I'm paying you to never come near her again. She's a person, not livestock. And if I ever hear of you treating anyone else the way you've treated her, I'll come back and we'll have a very different kind of conversation. Are we clear? The threat in Dex's voice was unmistakable. Silas snatched the money with shaking hands and nodded quickly. Clear. She's all yours. Good riddance, I say. Dex turned to Clara and offered his hand to help her down from the platform. His grip was firm, but surprisingly gentle. Miss Rollins, my name is Dex Granger. I own a ranch about 10 miles from here. I'm offering you a place to stay, fair work for fair wages, and most importantly, I'm offering you the chance to get away from this. He gestured at the crowd and at Silas. You're not obligated to come with me, and you're not my property. But if you want to leave this town and these people behind, I'm giving you that option. Clara looked at this stranger, this intimidating, powerful man who had just paid $50 to get her away from her uncle, and made a split-second decision born of desperation and a tiny spark of hope. I'll come with you. Dex nodded and turned to address the crowd one final time. Let me make something very clear to all of you. Clara Rollins is under my protection now. Anyone who has a problem with that, anyone who thinks they can mock her or mistreat her, will answer to me personally. And I promise you, that's not a conversation you want to have. The crowd parted before them like water, no one willing to challenge Dex Granger's authority or his clear willingness to back up his words with action. He led Clara to a buckboard wagon, helped her onto the seat with that same surprising gentleness, and handed her a canteen of water. Drink, he said. You're dehydrated from standing in that sun. We've got a couple hours ride ahead of us, so make yourself as comfortable as you can. As they left Bitterwell behind, heading toward the mountains in the distance, Clara finally found her voice. Why did you do that? Pay $50 for me? You don't even know me. Dex was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the trail ahead. My sister, he finally said. Her name was Margaret. She was heavy-set like you, and people treated her terribly because of it. Our father saw her as an embarrassment and married her off to the first man who'd take her, a farmer who needed unpaid labor more than he needed a wife. That farmer worked her to death within 3 years, beat her, starved her, treated her worse than he treated his animals. His jaw clenched with old pain. I was away working cattle drives, didn't know how bad it had gotten until I came back and found she'd died. I swore then that if I ever saw another woman being treated the way Margaret was treated, I'd do something about it. So when I rode into town today and heard about your uncle's auction, I knew what I had to do. Clara felt tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry about your sister, and thank you for seeing me as worth saving. You are worth saving, Dex said firmly. And Miss Rollins, Clara, if I may call you that, I need you to understand something. I didn't buy you. I can't buy a person because people aren't property. What I did was pay your uncle to give up whatever legal claim he thought he had on you. But you're not mine. You're your own person, free to make your own choices. I'm offering you work and shelter, but you can leave any time you want. Clear?" "Clear," Clara whispered, though she could barely process what he was saying. No one had ever talked to her this way, with respect, with consideration for her feelings and choices, with the assumption that she had value and agency. Dex's ranch appeared as they crested a ridge, a sprawling operation in a protected valley with a substantial ranch house, barn, corrals, and outbuildings. As they approached, 3 cowhands emerged from the barn, their eyes widening when they saw Clara in the wagon beside their boss. "Boys," Dex said as he helped Clara down, "this is Clara Rollins. She's going to be working here, helping manage the household and kitchen. You'll treat her with the same respect you'd show any other employee, which means no crude jokes, no comments about her appearance, and no making her uncomfortable. Anyone who has a problem with that can collect their pay and ride out now." The 3 men looked at each other, then back at Dex, and nodded. They'd all worked for Dex long enough to know he meant every word he said, and none of them was stupid enough to cross him. Inside the ranch house, Clara found herself in surprisingly comfortable surroundings. The main room was spacious and well-furnished, with a large fireplace, comfortable chairs, and shelves of books. The kitchen was well-equipped, though clearly not recently used by anyone who knew how to cook properly. "Your room is through that door," Dex said, gesturing to a doorway off the main room. "It's private, has a lock on the inside, and it's yours for as long as you're here. I sleep upstairs in the loft. There's a washroom out back, and if you need anything, clothes, supplies, whatever, just let me know and I'll get it." He paused, seeming to search for words. "Clara, I know this is all happening very fast, and I know you have no reason to trust me, but I want you to understand that you're safe here. I'm offering you employment, not anything else. Fair wages for honest work. Nothing expected beyond that. Understood?" "Understood," Clara said, though part of her was still waiting for the catch, for the moment when his kindness would reveal itself as a trap. But the catch never came. Over the following weeks and months, Dex proved to be exactly what he'd promised, a fair employer who treated her with consistent respect and consideration. He paid her a wage that was actually generous by frontier standards, gave her genuine responsibilities managing the household, and never once made her feel ashamed of her size or inadequate in any way. The ranch hands took their cue from Dex. If any of them had initial doubts or cruel thoughts about Clara, they kept them to themselves. Dex's protection was absolute, and his willingness to enforce his rules was never in question. But it was the townspeople who presented the real problem. When Dex brought Clara into Bitterwell for supplies a month after her arrival, the whispers and stares followed them everywhere. People who had been at the auction recognized her, and the gossip spread like wildfire. "That's Dex's fat girl," someone whispered loudly enough to be heard. "Can't believe he's actually keeping her around." "Probably uses her as pack animal," another voice added with cruel laughter. Dex's reaction was swift and terrifying. He turned on his heel, crossed to the man who had spoken, and lifted him clean off his feet with one hand, slamming him against the wall of the general store. "Say that again," Dex said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "Say one more word about Clara, and I'll break every bone in your body, slowly." The man's face went white with terror. I'm sorry, Mr. Granger. I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," Dex interrupted. "But you won't say it again, will you? because you know what I'll do if you do." He set the man down and turned to address the small crowd that had gathered. "Let me make this simple for all of you. Clara Rawlins is under my protection. She's a valued employee, and more than that, she's someone I respect. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. And I promise you, you don't want to disrespect me. Are we clear?" Silent nods all around. After that day, people in Bitterwell were much more careful about what they said in Dex's presence, though Clara knew the whispers continued behind their backs. What surprised Clara most was how Dex actually seemed to enjoy her company. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch and talk about books, about the land, about their pasts, and their hopes for the future. Dex shared stories from his cattle-driving days, from his time as a soldier during the war, from the years he'd spent building his ranch from nothing. Clara shared her memories of her parents, the pain of being raised by an uncle who saw her as nothing but a burden, and her gradual discovery that she had skills and worth that had nothing to do with her appearance. "You're one of the smartest people I've met," Dex told her one evening. "The way you've organized this ranch, improved efficiency, managed supplies, you've got a natural head for business. Your uncle was a fool for not seeing it." "My uncle only saw my size," Clara said quietly. "That's all anyone ever sees." "I don't," Dex said firmly. "When I look at you, I see capability, intelligence, courage, and a kind heart despite years of cruelty. Your size is just one small part of who you are, Clara. It doesn't define you." Clara felt something shift in her chest at his words. For the first time in her life, she was being seen, truly seen, as a complete person rather than just a body to be judged and found wanting. The turning point in their relationship came during a summer storm that sent Dex's prized longhorn herd into a panic. Lightning struck too close to the main pasture, and suddenly 300 head of cattle were stampeding directly toward the ranch buildings. Dex and his hands were trying desperately to turn the herd, but they were overwhelmed. Clara, watching from the ranch house, saw the danger immediately. Without hesitation, she grabbed the largest lantern she could find, ran out into the driving rain, and began waving it frantically, shouting at the top of her lungs to divert the lead animals. Her substantial size and the bright light she carried made her impossible for the cattle to ignore. They began to veer away from her, turning back toward open pasture. Dex, seeing what she was doing, worked to reinforce the turn, and together they managed to redirect the stampede away from the buildings. By the time the storm passed and the herd settled, both Dex and Clara were soaked, exhausted, and covered in mud. But the ranch had been saved. Dex crossed to where Clara stood catching her breath, and without warning, he pulled her into his arms. "You could have been killed," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "That herd could have trampled you." "They could have trampled you too," Clara pointed out. "I wasn't going to just stand there and watch you die trying to save the ranch alone." Dex pulled back just far enough to look at her face, his hands framing her round cheeks with surprising tenderness. "Clara, I need to tell you something. When I paid that $50 to get you away from your uncle, I told myself I was just helping someone who needed help. That was true, but it wasn't the whole truth." He took a deep breath. "The whole truth is that even in those first few minutes, I saw something remarkable in you. Despite everything you'd been through, you hadn't been broken. There was fire in your eyes, dignity in how you held yourself. And these past months, watching you transform this ranch, watching you become more confident and more fully yourself. Clara, I've fallen in love with you, not because you're convenient or useful, but because of who you are, your strength, your intelligence, your kindness, your courage. I love you, and I'm hoping you might feel the same. Clara stared at him, tears mingling with the rain on her face. I do love you. I've been afraid to even hope you could feel that way about me, but I do. I love you, Dex. Dex kissed her then, gentle at first, then with growing passion, and Clara felt years of shame and self-doubt finally begin to dissolve. Someone loved her. Someone saw her worth. Someone chose her. They married quietly a month later, with the ranch hands as witnesses and a circuit preacher performing the ceremony. Clara wore a dress she'd sewn herself from fabric Dex had bought in the nearest large town. And when Dex slipped a simple gold band onto her finger and spoke his vows with fierce conviction, she knew she had finally found home. But the townspeople of Bidwell still hadn't learned their lesson. 3 months after the wedding, Clara and Dex went into town for supplies. As they entered the saloon, Clara needing to speak with the owner about a beef order, a drunk cowboy at the bar decided to be clever. "Hey, Dex," he called out with a cruel laugh. "What's it like waking up next to a whale every morning? Do you use her for shade in the summer?" The saloon went dead silent. Everyone present knew what was coming, could see it in the way Dex's entire body went rigid, in the way his hands clenched into fists. Dex crossed the room in 3 long strides. He grabbed the cowboy by the front of his shirt, lifted him completely off his feet, all 200 pounds of him, and carried him to the saloon doors like he weighed nothing. Then, with a force that made the entire building shake, Dex threw the man out into the street. "Anyone else?" Dex asked, turning to face the room. "Anyone else want to insult my wife? Because I've got all day, and I'm more than happy to keep throwing people into the street until you all learn some basic human decency." Silence. Then the saloon owner spoke up. "I apologize for that, Mr. Granger, Mrs. Granger. That man is no longer welcome in this establishment." Dex nodded and turned to Clara, his expression softening immediately. "You all right?" "I'm fine," Clara said, though her voice shook slightly. "Thank you for defending me." "Always," Dex said firmly, "always and forever. You're my wife, Clara, my partner, my equal, and anyone who disrespects you will answer to me." After that incident, word spread quickly throughout Bidwell and the surrounding ranches. Clara Granger was not to be mocked or insulted, not if you valued your health and your reputation. Dex Granger's protection of his wife was absolute, and his willingness to back it up with physical force was unquestioned. Over the following years, Clara and Dex built a life together that became legendary in the territory. Their ranch prospered under their combined management. Clara's business acumen and organizational skills complemented Dex's practical knowledge and physical strength perfectly. They took in several orphan children over the years, building a family that was as unconventional as it was loving. Clara also became a leader in the community, despite, or perhaps because of, her size and her story. Women who were struggling, who were being mistreated, who needed help, they came to Clara. She offered them work, shelter, advice, and most importantly, the understanding that came from someone who had survived similar struggles. Years later, sitting on their porch watching the sunset over their thriving ranch, Clara spoke quietly to Dex. "Do you remember what you said to my uncle that day? that you didn't buy me, you saved me." "I remember," Dex said. "You were right," Clara said. "You did save me, but not just from my uncle or from that humiliating auction. You saved me from believing I was worthless. You showed me that I had value, that I deserved respect and love, that my size didn't define my worth. You gave me back to myself, Dex. That's what you really saved." Dex pulled her close, this remarkable woman who had transformed his life as much as he'd transformed hers. "We saved each other," he said. "I was just going through the motions before you came along, building a ranch, but not really living. You reminded me what it means to have purpose, to have partnership, to have love. We saved each other, Clara, and we'll keep saving each other every single day." And they did, building a legacy that lasted long after they were gone, proving to everyone who witnessed their story that true worth has nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with character, courage, and the willingness to stand up for what matters, regardless of what narrow-minded people might say.